In Casino, Tony and Michael Spilotro are beaten with baseball bats in an Indiana cornfield and buried alive. In a federal courtroom in 2007, a man who was in the room testified that no bats were used, nobody was buried alive, and it did not happen in a cornfield. One of those versions was seen by millions of people. The other sat sealed in court records for 21 years. The version you have not heard is worse. The brothers knew something was wrong before they left the house that afternoon. Michael's wife would later testify that he told her if he was not back by 9 o'clock, it was no good. His daughter, Michelle, told the court that her father said he loved her at least 10 times before walking out the door. He handed her his jewelry in a plastic sandwich bag and told her to bring it to a graduation party they were supposed to attend that evening. Both brothers emptied their pockets, they took off their watches, they removed everything that could identify them. Michael tucked a small .22 caliber handgun into his clothes. They were not walking into that meeting blind. They just could not say no. Michael was told he was finally being made full membership in the Chicago outfit. After years of working as an associate, he was supposedly getting the thing he'd been chasing his whole adult life. Tony was told he was being promoted to capo, a crew leader with his own territory. After years of heat and whispered conversations about whether the Spilotro brothers had become a problem, this meeting was supposed to be a peace offering. James Marcello picked them up and drove them to a house in Bensonville, a quiet suburb near O'Hare Airport. He pulled into the attached garage. The door closed behind them. They walked through down the stairs into a basement where the ceremony was supposed to happen. There was no ceremony. There were 15 men waiting. The common version of this story treats Michael like Tony's kid brother who got caught up in something that wasn't about him. That's wrong. Michael Spilotro was deep in the life on his own terms: bookmaking, drug dealing, prostitution, robbery, extortion. He ran a restaurant in Chicago called Hoagie's and helped manage a jewelry store with Tony called the Gold Rush. He had his own federal indictments pending. Tony's son Vincent later said publicly that Michael may have been the real target of the hit, and Tony was killed to stop him from seeking revenge. If that's true, the outfit wasn't reluctantly taking out Tony's brother as a loose end. They were killing Tony as a precaution. So how did two of the most feared guys in the Chicago outfit end up walking into their own execution? Tony Spilotro had been the outfit's man in Las Vegas since 1971. His job was straightforward: sit on the casino skim and make sure nobody touched it. His childhood friend, Frank Rosenthal, was running 4 strip casinos for Chicago: the Stardust, the Fremont, the Hacienda, the Marina. The way the skim worked was almost comically simple. Casino employees loyal to the outfit would rig the slot machine count rooms, skimming cash before it ever hit the official books. Couriers carried it back to Chicago in suitcases, sometimes on private planes, sometimes in the trunks of cars driving through the desert. $1 million a month from slots alone, plus table game money on top. Any rational person would have looked at that arrangement and thought, I will protect this with my life and never draw a single unnecessary eyeball to it. Tony was supposed to protect that pipeline and stay invisible. He got bored. That's the part of this story that never gets enough attention. Tony Spilotro wasn't taken down by the FBI or a rival family or bad luck. He was taken down by his own inability to sit still, when sitting still was literally the only thing anyone asked him to do. $1 million a month was flowing through his hands, and all he had to do was watch it go by. He couldn't. Tony was 5'2", with a reputation that made men twice his size nervous. He had earned that reputation back in the early 60s, before Vegas, when the bosses sent him to find 2 rogue burglars who had killed connected men in an outfit neighborhood. When the first one, Billy McCarthy, would not give up his partner, Tony put McCarthy's head in a carpenter's vise and squeezed until an eye popped out. McCarthy talked. Tony killed both of them. He was made at 25. For the next decade, the bosses trusted him because he had no limits. And then Vegas happened. Instead of protecting the skim, Tony started running his own burglary crew on the side, the Hole in the Wall gang. They drilled through walls and ceilings to break into homes and jewelry stores across Las Vegas. Every job made Tony money. Every job also put another file on an FBI agent's desk. Think about that. The outfit is pulling $1 million a month out of 4 casinos, and Tony is risking that entire operation so he can steal jewelry from suburban homes. The Metro Intelligence Unit built an entire surveillance operation around Tony's crew and planted an informant named Sal Romano directly inside the gang. On the 4th of July, 1981, the FBI caught them mid-burglary at a gift shop. Years of patient work, one bust, and Chicago got the message loud and clear. Tony was not protecting the money. He was lighting a flare over it. Then Tony crossed a line that turned a business problem into something personal. He started sleeping with Jerry McGee, Frank Rosenthal's wife, the same Frank Rosenthal who had been his friend since they were kids on the west side of Chicago. The same guy who once talked another mobster out of strangling Tony after he mouthed off to the wrong person. Rosenthal had literally saved Tony's life, and Tony repaid him by going after his wife. The FBI already had wiretaps on virtually everyone in the outfit's Vegas operation, and the affair ended up on tape. It gave the government a crowbar to pry apart the one relationship that had kept the whole Las Vegas setup stable. Jerry was found drugged in the lobby of a Los Angeles hotel in November of 1982. She died 3 days later. Valium, cocaine, and whiskey. She was 46. When Rosenthal was later asked how he felt about Tony's murder, he reportedly said he was glad he wasn't asked to be one of his pallbearers. Tony's own lieutenant flipped next. Frank Collada had been with him since they were teenagers. When the FBI arrested Collada, they played him a wiretap recording of Chicago bosses saying Tony needed to clean his dirty laundry, which was outfit code for killing liabilities. Collada heard his own name in that conversation. He didn't think twice. He made a deal, confessed to over 300 crimes, including 4 murders, and disappeared into witness protection. He gave the FBI a complete map of Tony's operation. Every name, every job, every dollar, years of loyalty, erased by one recording. You'd think somebody in Chicago would have pulled Tony out before the damage got this bad. Nobody did. And I think that's because the outfit never saw Tony as a person they needed to save. They saw him as a line item that hadn't turned negative yet. The moment the cost of keeping him alive exceeded the cost of killing him, the math was done. By 1985, Tony had gotten the boss of the entire Chicago outfit sent to prison. Joey Ayupa was convicted on skimming charges tied to the same casinos Tony had been sent to guard. Ayupa was in his late 70s. When he went away, he blamed Tony. The guy who was supposed to keep Las Vegas invisible had turned himself into the most famous mobster in Nevada. If Tony had just done the job he was given, he'd have died an old man. The bosses voted. Both brothers had to go. The first plan was to kill Tony in Vegas. A hit team, including Nick Calabrese, flew out there with explosives and automatic weapons. They planned to blow up Tony's car or ambush him on the street. That plan fell apart. Too many FBI agents watching Tony's every move, too many variables. So the outfit went with something quieter, something that required the brothers to come to them willingly. A fake ceremony, a fake promotion, a real basement, and that's the part that sits with me more than anything else in this story. They didn't just kill the Spilotro brothers, they used the one thing Michael wanted most in the world to get him into the room. So here's what actually happened in that basement, according to the man who was there. At the Operation Family Secrets trial, a pathologist walked through the autopsy results. Neither brother's skin had been broken by a heavy object. No weapons at all. The injuries were consistent with punches, kicks, and stomping. Then Nicholas Calabrese took the stand and named the men in the room: James LaPietra, John Feccarata, John DeFranzo, Sam Carlisi, Louis Eboli, James Marcello, Louis Marino, Joseph Ferriola, Ernest Infelice. He described walking up to Michael saying, "How you doing, Mike?" and then grabbing his legs, while Eboli wrapped a rope around Michael's neck and strangled him. He described hearing Tony's voice somewhere behind him asking to pray, and then hearing nothing else because the beating had already started around him. Michael never got to his 22. And this is the part that stays with you. 15 men in a room, and not one of them reached for a weapon. They used their hands, fists, knees, feet, a rope. That's not an execution, that's personal. Every man in that room chose to keep hitting, and there's an irony to it that I don't think is accidental. Tony Spilotro built his entire reputation on what he did to Billy McCarthy with a vice. Hands-on, close range, no distance between him and the violence. The outfit killed him the same way. The man who made his name through brutality got exactly that in return. If you're watching this far in, hit subscribe. I cover organized crime cases every week, pulling from trial transcripts in federal case files that the movies skip over. After both brothers were dead, the men stripped them to their underwear to remove any trace evidence from the clothing. They drove the bodies roughly 100 miles southeast to a cornfield near Enos, Indiana. They buried them one on top of the other in a single shallow grave underneath freshly planted corn rows. Indiana, not Illinois, so a different jurisdiction would have to pick up the case. One grave, not two, meant less disturbed earth for someone to notice. These men had done this before. John Feccarata had handled part of the burial. The outfit later killed him for botching it. The bodies turned up too fast, and Feccarata had been running his mouth to his wife and his girlfriend about outfit business. That made him a problem on top of a problem. 8 days after the murders, a farmer near the Willow Slough Preserve noticed freshly turned earth between his corn rows. He figured a poacher had buried a deer killed out of season and called it in. When investigators started digging, they did not find a deer. They found two bodies, stacked, stripped to their undershorts, 5 feet down. The farmer reportedly said that this does not look like any animal skin I have ever seen. The bodies went to Indianapolis for autopsy. They were too damaged to identify visually. Patrick, the Spilotro brother, who had become a dentist instead of a gangster, provided the dental x-rays that confirmed it was Tony and Michael. 5 of the 6 Spilotro brothers went into organized crime. The 6th identified their bodies. The Chicago Archdiocese refused to give them a Catholic funeral. A private service was held at Salerno's Galewood Chapel on North Harlem Avenue. About 300 people showed up. Among them, according to court records, were 3 of the men who had beaten them to death. They stood with the mourners. They looked at the bronze coffins. They said nothing. That silence held for almost 20 years, and money kept it in place. When Operation Family Secrets finally produced an indictment in 2005, 14 outfit members were charged in connection with 18 murders. The way the case came together is almost hard to believe. Frank Calabrese Jr., the son of outfit enforcer Frank Calabrese Sr., had secretly cooperated with the FBI while both men were in federal prison. Jr. wore a wire, and he recorded his own father taping him in a prison visiting room. That is how deep Operation Family Secrets went. Nicholas Calabrese, Frank Sr.'s brother, and the hitman who had grabbed Michael's legs in that basement became the first made member of the outfit to ever flip for the government. But even after he started cooperating, he lied about one thing. He protected James Marcello, the man who drove the brothers to Bensonville. Marcello had been paying Calabrese's wife $4,000 every month while Calabrese was in prison. That was not generosity. That was a payroll. The outfit understood something about loyalty that does not show up in the movies. You do not buy silence with a one-time payment. You buy it with a check that shows up every single month. Because the day it stops, so does the silence. It kept Marcello's name out of Calabrese's testimony for years, even as Calabrese was giving up everything else. Prosecutors finally broke him with DNA evidence from a separate murder, a bloody glove left at the scene of John Feccarata's killing, tied back to Calabrese. Once they had that evidence, the $4,000 insurance policy stopped working. Marcello was convicted and sentenced to life in February of 2009. He's still in a federal supermax in Colorado. Joey the Clown Lombardo got life too, but died behind bars. Calabrese got 12 years for his cooperation, 14 murders, 12 years. He died in March of 2023 at 80 years old, a free man. After Tony Spilotro was gone, nobody replaced him. The skim was over. The casino era that had made the outfit rich for 15 years just stopped, and the Chicago mob never got Las Vegas back. The trial testimony changes the story, not because it's more violent than the movie, because it's more human. Two men who emptied their pockets, said goodbye to their families, and drove to a meeting they already suspected was a trap, because refusing was not an option. And a daughter who had to sit in a federal courtroom years later and tell a jury that her father said he loved her 10 times before he walked out the door. He knew, and he went anyway. Casino changed the weapons, the location, and the fact that those two men walked in willingly. But what Hollywood does to the endings is a whole other conversation. I've got more of those coming.